When was the last time you drove somewhere just to choose a movie? Before 1977, that question didn't exist. Films lived in cinemas. Television showed you what it wanted, when it wanted. You had no say. Then a black plastic rectangle with a blinking clock arrived in the living room, and Friday night was never the same again. Before the VHS tape, television watched you as much as you watched it. The network designed your evening. 8 o'clock was when the drama aired. If you were anywhere other than your couch at that moment, you missed it. Saturday morning cartoons were on Saturday mornings because the network put them there. The late news was 6 and 11 because that was where the network placed it. There was no catch-up, no second chance. The program existed once in real time and then it was history. Remember when you had no choice of what to watch? The idea of recording television at home had existed since the 1950s. The problem was always the same. The machines that could do it were the size of refrigerators, cost as much as a car, and required a trained technician to operate. They lived in broadcast studios and nowhere else. JVC engineer Yuma Shiraishi and his team spent the better part of a decade solving that problem. The challenge wasn't just miniaturization, it was the tape itself. To record moving images with sound at acceptable quality, you needed a lot of tape moving very fast past the recording head. The early machines used open reels like audio tape recorders, but scaled up enormously. Getting that down to a cassette format that a consumer could handle, load, eject, store on a shelf, required rethinking the entire mechanical system. The solution was the helical scan recording head, a drum that rotated at high speed while the tape moved slowly past it, writing diagonal tracks across the tape rather than straight lines. This meant far more information could be packed into a shorter length of tape without sacrificing quality. It was the engineering insight that made the home VCR possible. JVC launched VHS in Japan in 1976. The first machines were still large, expensive, and loaded from the top. The cassette dropped in from above like bread into a toaster. They cost the equivalent of several months' salary, but they worked, and they recorded 2 hours on a single tape. That was the number that changed everything. The VHS tape wasn't the first home video format. Sony got there first with Betamax in 1975, and by almost every technical measure, Betamax was the superior product. Better picture quality, more compact cassettes, a 2-year head start on the market. JVC launched VHS in Japan in 1976 and the United States in 1977. The tape was about 30% larger. The picture quality was slightly inferior. On every specification sheet that mattered to engineers, Betamax won. But JVC had been listening to something Sony hadn't. Sports fans wanted to record a full game. Betamax could only record 1 hour. VHS could hold 2, enough for a feature film, enough for most sporting events. JVC extended that further, letting users slow the recording speed to fit 4 hours on a single $25 tape. The picture quality dropped, but the sports fans didn't care. They wanted the whole game. Sony had been told this. Sony ignored it. The format war lasted less than a decade. By the mid-1980s, VHS had won so completely that Betamax became a footnote. The first entry in a long list of superior technologies that lost because they misunderstood what people actually needed. The Game Boy's monochrome screen beat the Game Gear's color display for the same reason. The machine that understood how people would really use it won every time. The first VCRs looked like what they were: industrial equipment adapted for home use. Top-loading, beige or gray plastic, utilitarian. They sat on top of the television like an afterthought because nobody had yet decided where they belonged in the home. By the early 1980s, that changed. Front-loading machines arrived. Slimmer, lower profile, the cassette sliding in horizontally rather than dropping from above. And with the front-loading format came a shift in how the VCR was designed to be seen. The machines turned black, rectangular, finished with the same brushed surfaces and clean lines as the hi-fi amplifiers and tuners that were already decorating living rooms. For the first time, the VCR was designed to belong, to sit in a stack with the amplifier below and the speakers either side, part of a home entertainment system rather than a foreign object balanced on top of the television. This mattered more than it sounds. A technology becomes truly domestic when it stops looking like technology. The front-loading VCR in its black rectangular casing, with its row of softly labeled buttons, looked like the living room had been designed around it. And eventually, manufacturers took that logic to its conclusion. VCR/ television combination units arrived. The recording machine built directly into the screen, a single object where two had been. When a technology gets absorbed into the device it was attached to, that's the signal it has permanently won. The VCR had stopped being an accessory. It had become infrastructure. Hold a VHS cassette and you understand what it meant to own something that moved. The weight of it. The specific black plastic, the way the reels were visible through the window on the spine. You could see how much tape was left, how far through the film you were, a physical relationship with the content that no streaming interface has ever replicated. You knew where you were in the story because you could see it. Loading the tape was its own small ritual. The machine accepted it with a mechanical clunk, a sound that meant something was about to happen, that you had made a choice, and the machine was honoring it. The blue screen, the moment of anticipation before the image appeared, and the tracking lines. When the tape was worn or the heads needed cleaning, the picture would drift, horizontal interference crossing the screen, the image scrambling and resolving at the edge of legibility. The more a tape had been watched, the more it showed. The most loved films degraded visibly. You could see the evidence of how many times The Goonies had been rewound and played again. The tape was a physical record of its own use. Then there was the blinking clock. The VCR was the first piece of technology in most living rooms that required programming. A date, a time, a channel to record something while you slept, and almost nobody could do it. The manual was impossible to follow. The buttons were labeled in a language that made sense to engineers and nobody else. So the clock blinked. A green 12 o'clock, permanently in millions of living rooms across the world, a monument to the gap between what the machine could do and what ordinary people could make it do. The VHS tape gave you unprecedented power over your television. The blinking clock reminded you daily that the machine was still slightly smarter than you. Did you ever figure out how to set the clock? When the VHS tape arrived, Hollywood tried to kill it. Universal and Disney sued Sony in 1976, arguing that the Betamax VCR enabled copyright infringement by allowing people to record their films off television. Jack Valenti, president of the Motion Picture Association of America, told Congress in 1982 that the VCR was to the American film producer what the Boston Strangler was to the woman home alone. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in January 1984 that home recording constituted fair use. Hollywood lost, narrowly, bitterly, and then almost immediately discovered that home video was its most profitable revenue stream. By the late 1980s, people didn't just record films off television, they bought them, they rented them, they watched them on Friday night on the couch with a pizza, and then they watched them again the following Saturday. The living room became the cinema, the couch became the destination. The couch potato was born, one who didn't go out to be entertained, but stayed in, deliberately, contentedly, with a tape, a remote, and nowhere else to be. More money was being made from VHS sales and rentals than from theatrical box office. Hollywood had tried to destroy the VHS tape, and ironically, the VHS tape saved Hollywood instead. And 30 years later, those same studios would fight streaming and end up building streaming services. The pattern never changes, only the format does. The first behavior the VHS tape created was time shifting, recording something to watch later. This sounds unremarkable now. In 1977, it was the first act of rebellion against the broadcast schedule in the history of television. The Thursday night program you missed because of Parents' Evening, taped. The game that ran past midnight, taped. The finale you wanted to watch twice, saved. For the first time, ordinary people could say to the network, "I'll watch that when I'm ready." Not when you decided, when I'm ready. Then in the 2000s, TiVo was the first to automate it. Netflix removed the physical object, streaming removed every remaining constraint, but the VHS tape invented the original demand, and the networks never fully recovered. Before the VHS tape, you could not own a moving image. Films were events. You caught them once in a cinema or on a television broadcast that might never repeat, and then they were gone. The best you could do was hold the memory. The VHS tape changed that completely. You could watch Back to the Future on a Saturday afternoon, rewind, and watch it again. A third time because it was raining and nobody was stopping you. Entire generations can quote films they've never read a word of because they watched them until the dialogue was inside them, until the music cues were muscle memory, until the film was less something they'd seen and more something they'd lived inside. And you could own it, hold it, put it on a shelf. Disney titles in the blue clamshell cases, handwritten labels on recorded-off TV tapes, Simpsons Series 3, World Cup Final 1990, Die Hard recorded ITV 1994. A personal archive built over years specific to one family, irreplaceable. Collecting films became the same act as collecting records. A statement of taste, of identity, of what mattered enough to keep. What was on your shelf said something about who you were. The gaps, the films you hadn't found yet, gave you something to look for. What did you watch 50 times that wore down the tape? VHS invented the video store, and the video store invented Friday night. The act of going to your neighborhood video store, choosing something, and bringing it home was your Friday night. The anticipation of what to rent that began before you'd even seen the titles on the shelf. Browsing the new releases, the back catalog where you found the cult classic by accident, the argument about what to watch, different people wanting different things, the negotiation. The pizza arrived before you'd started the film because the evening had a shape now, and the delivered pizza was part of it. Be kind, rewind, the sticker on every rental tape. 3 words that encoded an entire social contract. The late fee if you didn't. The mild social shame of the Blockbuster employee informing you of your outstanding balance. These were the frictions of the system. Small, human, manageable. The friction that proved the thing mattered. The friction that eventually became obsolete. The VHS tape did something else nobody had anticipated. It went both ways. The camcorder arrived in the early 1980s, a VHS recorder you could carry on your shoulder, pointed at the world rather than at a television screen. For the first time, ordinary families could make their own films with sound, watchable on your television the same day you shot them. Before the camcorder, home movies meant Super 8 film, expensive, silent, and sent away for processing. They had to be projected on a sheet for that special viewing. The footage of your childhood existed in small rectangles of celluloid that most families watched once a year and stored in a shoebox. The camcorder changed all of that. Christmas mornings recorded in real time, birthday parties, holidays, school plays, all of it recorded and watchable that same evening on the same machine that played Back to the Future. You just had to be careful not to tape over that special football game. The VHS tape had already changed how families watched other people's stories. The camcorder made families the authors of their own. The VHS tape lasted over 20 years before the DVD finally overtook it. But notice what the DVD changed and what it didn't. The format changed, the behavior didn't. You still rented, you still collected. You still watched what you wanted when you wanted. The tracking lines disappeared. The rewind disappeared. DVDs skipped instead of blurred. But the fundamental relationship between viewer and screen, established by the VHS tape, transferred to every subsequent format without friction. TiVo automated the time shifting the VHS tape had invented. Netflix eliminated the drive the video store had required. Streaming eliminated the physical object entirely. Binge watching is watching The Goonies 50 times on a Saturday, scaled to a full series, industrialized by an algorithm that learned what you wanted and kept giving it to you until you forgot to stop. Each step in that chain is the VHS tape's original demand, fulfilled more completely. Now we watch what I want, when I want, as many times as I want, without driving anywhere or paying a late fee. The VHS tape made that demand first. Every format since has been answering it. Do you remember your last Blockbuster rental? Blockbuster corporatized the video rental industry. 9,000 stores, 84,000 employees. A business built entirely on the behavior the VHS tape had created, the Friday night drive, the browsing, the choice, the occasion. In 2000, they were offered the chance to buy Netflix for $50 million. They passed. Netflix understood something Blockbuster didn't, that the behavior the VHS tape had created wasn't about the store. It was about the control. Watch what you want, when you want, without driving anywhere or paying a late fee. The store was just the delivery mechanism. When a better mechanism arrived, the store became irrelevant. The VHS tape was not a way to watch movies. It was the first object that gave ordinary people complete control over their own screen. What they watched, when they watched it, how many times. For the first time in the history of broadcast media, the viewer held the schedule. Not the network, not the studio, not the broadcaster who had designed your evening for you since television began. That power, once given, was never taken back. It only expanded. The DVD removed the rewind. TiVo removed the planning. Netflix removed the drive. Streaming removed the shelf. The algorithm removed the choice itself, replaced by a system that watches you watching and decides what comes next. So you never have to stop and decide, never have to feel the slight friction of choosing, never have to drive anywhere or talk to anyone, or agree on something with the person sitting next to you. The VHS tape invented Friday night. The Friday night that required a drive, a negotiation, a tape on the seat beside you, a pizza ordered because the evening had a shape and the shape required food. That Friday night is mostly gone. What replaced it is more convenient, more infinite, more immediately satisfying in every measurable way. And somehow, every few years, someone goes to the last Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon, and finds a queue of people waiting outside just to walk the carpet one more time, just to pick up a tape, just to remember what it felt like when watching a film was an occasion you had to leave the house for. The network never recovered. The tape won. We just forgot to notice what we traded away while winning. Subscribe to support us and let us know the retro tech you miss. Thanks for watching.